What's up, class? Welcome back. And today, like we discussed earlier, we're going to be restoring an old photograph. Restoring old photographs is something that's done quite often in our field and is a great skill to learn. To do this, well, I gave you 5 tips to help you out, and we're going to utilize those 5 tips to really bring this photo back to its former glory. To start off with, we always work off a copy. In case something gets a little funky, we have the original somewhere. So first things first, duplicate your layer, and you can hide that. You're not going to need it, but it's just the backup. Next thing you want to do is fix the composition itself by straightening this image. It's a very simple thing to do. We can activate our crop tool here, and there's an option on the top that says straighten. What you want to do is draw a line on the image. So I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner where the image should be straight. It'll give me a box aligned to that. I can just take the corners and match it up with the edge of this photograph. Once I'm happy with my size, I can hit enter and it'll kind of pull the photograph. Now the photograph is tilted to the right, so I'm just going to go to image, transform, and rotate it counterclockwise 90 degrees. So now I have a perfectly straight photograph. Now we want to reduce some of the noise in this image. Now we talked about noise being like that veil, the scratches, the dust, all the things that kind of take away from the detail of the photograph. There's a filter that allows us to do this, but we want to use a smart object with this because we don't want the filter to apply to everything, because reduction of noise often reduces the details of a person's face, and we still want her face to be in focus. First things first, let's right click, convert this to a smart object so we can use a smart filter. The filter we're going to use today is under filter, noise, dust, and scratches. I would suggest you keep your radius from, let's say, 10 to 12, no more than that, and threshold from 25 to 30. Too high and you end up losing too much of the detail of your photograph. It might take a second to load. Now you'll see that the photo, her face has been obscured, but that's okay because we made a smart object. We're going to kind of bring her back and leave the background be a little softened. So I'm going to press OK. I'm going to activate my mask and I'm going to paint with black so that I bring her back so she's not covered in the dust and scratches filter, just the background. So I would recommend a really soft brush for this. Paint with black over her, and I'm just going to bring her back into detail. This next part is where you're going to spend the majority of your time today, really improving the large area of this photograph. All the scratches, the little pieces of white that are peeking through where the image has been damaged. Now, the good thing is most of the damage is not on the woman's face, so it's a little easier to retouch. When you have something like details of a face, it's so much more difficult. You're going to be utilizing 3 different tools today to do this retouching. You're going to use the clone stamp tool, you're going to use the patch tool, and you're going to use the spot healing brush. Now, depending the area, you might want to mix and match. So I'm going to show you different areas and different techniques that you might like, but you can use whichever ones you're comfortable with. Just make sure that at the end it looks good, right? It looks like it hasn't been retouched. A good retouch is not obvious. Before we start retouching, we're going to have to rasterize our layer again because the effects we're going to do will not work on a smart object. So we're going to right click rasterize. That's why we did that effect first with the dust and the scratches. So now we're going to use, let's say, our patch tool. We can kind of zoom in on an area. Maybe we want to do like a little corner, this little scratch here. We can try this patch tool and see if it works. Let's take our patch tool, take a selection, and then drag to an area we want it to be replaced with, and it'll replace it. If the edges look a little soft, you might have to work in smaller sections. Okay, that worked pretty well. I can do the edges as well. I like to work outside in. Your technique is up to you, but that's for the patch tool. Okay, I don't love the patch tool for this, so I'm going to try the clone stamp now. And this is how I work. If something is not working a tool, I go mix to another tool until I find something that works. Now, the clone stamp tool is my personal favorite to retouch because I can do it non-destructively. So let me show you how to do that. You're going to make a new blank layer so that all your retouching with the clone stamp tool is on this layer. I'm going to actually name it clone stamp just for my benefit. Remember, the clone stamp is the only one not part of that tool set. Anytime I use the clone stamp, I work with a very soft brush so the edges are feathered and easy to blend. And I also make sure that my source here says current and below. What this means, it is going to work on the current layer, but it's going to steal pixels from the layer below. Now, some of you have trouble using Alt or Option on your keyboard. You can click this button Alt up here instead. I have no issue using it on my keyboard, so I'm going to utilize it. I'm going to make my brush a little bigger, and I'm going to hold down Alt and Option to select an area I want to steal from, and then paint over an area I want to remove. And I resample often so that the pixels don't look too copy-pasted. And personally, I think the clone stamp tool might have been a better option for these edges. It might be the same for this edge as well. So I'm going to show you, hold down Alt or Option, and you can kind of clean up your edges of your photograph. Lastly, I'm going to show you with the spot healing brush. Spot healing brush is located with the other retouching tools here. Again, I like a very soft brush, and I can hit this current and below as well. So I can do retouching with my spot healing brush non-destructively as well with my clone stamp tool layer. I can blend them in together, and I can kind of go and similarly, it'll blend the edges. I think it depends how soft you want the blend to be. If you want to use the clone stamp tool or the spot healing, they both work really well. With the spot healing brush, I don't have to hold down alter option to sample, I can simply just paint. So I'm going to go over this area and paint and release, and it should fill in with pixels from nearby. I like the control of the clone stamp tool a little better, but this works pretty well for smaller scratches. You can mix and match. Your goal is to go around the entire photograph and remove all the really large scratches and make this photograph look new and improved. Take your time, be patient, and don't be afraid to mix and match your tools while you work. I'm going to speed up this process for myself, but I'm probably going to spend at least 15 minutes to 20 minutes just retouching. How we end up here, time and time again, swallowed up in doubt. Well, brother, I quit dreaming around the time that you did, and traded hopes of... I spent about 20-25 minutes really like going deep. You saw how much I zoomed in, how often I swapped my tools. I changed the hardness of my brush. I also changed the opacity of my brush if I found it to be too intense, right? And I was really patient. I went around the entire image. I tried to do as much as I could non-destructive, meaning I have it all on a separate layer. So if I do mess up, I can just erase part of that layer as opposed to having to start again. Once you're done with that, you're done with the majority of today's activity. Now we're going to work with some color correction. Now color corrections are often needed in older photographs because the lighting wasn't as good. So we can add an adjustment layer. I can work with things like brightness and contrast, levels, curves, just to work with the tonality of this to make it more intense. I'm going to work with levels and really work on the balance of this image. And just by playing around with the sliders, I have a nice more high contrast image that already looks a lot better than the original. Now, once you're done with the color corrections, you're technically done with this assignment. You can save it as a JPEG and give us a screenshot of your layers panel so that we can see your process. I'd highly recommend you try the extension where you colorize your image, but I'll do that in a separate little shorter video to show you how. It looks really good adding color to your photograph at the end. Good luck, be patient.